Hey guys, it's Chris. From a not-so-innocent grandpa breaking into New York homes to misunderstood Woodstock hippies and more, here are 9 older people who allegedly committed crimes. Number 9. 4th of July burglar. Samuel Sabatino reportedly spent years perfecting his burglary technique, which involved driving from his Florida home to upscale apartment buildings in New York City. He would slip past doormen by walking in with residents and engaging them in conversation, giving off the impression that they perhaps know each other or that he was a resident. His unassuming demeanor often failed to spark suspicion. And when it did, he pretended to be confused, as if he'd mistakenly entered the wrong building or floor. The elderly man's clever scam enabled him to make off with around $400,000 in stolen jewelry and other valuables that he took from people's homes while they were on vacation. But someone eventually caught on that something wasn't quite right about Sabatino's presence, and authorities began surveilling him in a complex multi-state investigation. Finally, in late 2019, a suspicious doorman turned the 81-year-old away from a Manhattan building and right into the custody of awaiting officers, who charged Sabatino with 11 counts of burglary. Police suspected him of having been involved with 12 or more burglaries that happened since 2014, many of which seem to occur on a semi-regular basis around major holidays that people tend to leave town for. This earned Sabatino the nickname the 4th of July burglar and the Holiday Bandit. And this wasn't the first time he was busted for breaking into apartments and stealing from wealthy residents. In fact, he'd been a wanted man for years. Described as a career criminal by investigation supervisor Lieutenant Kevin Blake in a New York Times article, Sabatino was arrested back in 2001 when a Manhattan resident found him inside their home with 42 pieces of jewelry and a list of addresses in his pocket. Then, around 60 years old, the aging criminal jumped bail and began using fake identities, successfully eluding the authorities for over a decade before he got caught again. Sabatino pled guilty last year to attempted burglary, bail jumping, burglary, and tampering with evidence and received a 5-year prison sentence, meaning he very well may spend the rest of his life behind bars. Number 8. Jewel thief. Doris Payne is a seasoned career criminal whose illicit deeds span the majority of her adult life. For 60 years, the West Virginia native made a living by stealing luxury goods, at one point becoming an international jewel thief. Her life of crime began in the 1950s, and in the following decades, she used at least 20 aliases and 5 social security numbers to pull off her scams undetected. During the 1970s, Payne allegedly stole a 10-carat diamond ring worth an estimated $500,000 in Monte Carlo. She fled to France but was extradited back to Monte Carlo and spent 9 months in holding while authorities tried but failed to recover the ring. And then they had no choice but to release her. Payne has also been arrested in Greece, France, Britain, and Switzerland, according to The Cut. Her crimes have continued into the present day, landing her in and out of prison and on probation, with judges ordering her to stay away from jewelry stores. She's even escaped federal custody once. While most of Payne's arrests involved the taking of items worth thousands of dollars or more, her more recent arrest was in 2017 for stealing $86 worth of merchandise from an Atlanta Walmart while wearing an ankle monitoring bracelet from her previous arrest. Her extensive rap sheet, both in the US and abroad, were the subject of a 2013 Netflix documentary called The Life and Crimes of Doris Payne. In the film, Payne claims to have stolen at least $2 million worth of jewels, stating, "There's never been a day that I went to steal that I did not get what I went to do." Number 7. Grandpa Woodstock. Since the 1990s, a man named Grandpa Woodstock has been a fixture of the town of Woodstock in Ulster County, New York. With long hair, a gray beard, and wizard-like clothing, he's often been seen riding around on his adult-sized tricycle or standing barefoot while flashing peace signs and holding a wooden staff equipped with a bicycle horn that he honks at cars as they drive by. Writing for the New York Times, Corey Kilgannon described the eccentric character, whose real name is Alan M. Richardson, as one of the remaining handful of holdouts representing the community's dwindling hippie population. which has shrunk considerably in recent years as the town becomes more affluent and commercialized. Grandpa Woodstock told Kilgannon that he moved to Woodstock to recapture the feel of the 1969 music festival. He lived there with his girlfriend, a woman 20 years older than him but equally peculiar, who was nicknamed Grandma Woodstock. The couple's peaceful existence was disrupted when in 2004, police charged the 70-year-old hippie icon with selling marijuana and other controlled substances out of his apartment. Acting on complaints from locals that he was dealing drugs to teenagers, narcotics investigators had made numerous undercover buys in the months leading up to the arrest, and Grandpa Woodstock would be another arrest added to the list. "Peace and love," Grandpa Woodstock repeated. "I spread peace and love, that's what I do." After spending several weeks in jail, Grandpa Woodstock pled guilty to misdemeanor charges for selling marijuana and received 3 years probation and, much to his dismay, weekly drug tests. He was also banned from seeing Grandma Woodstock, and the couple went their separate ways. Richardson defended his actions, claiming that he only sold pot to teens whose parents knew they were buying it and trusted him as a safe source. Grandpa Woodstock stated, "I'm trying to spread flower power and trying to get people to love each other like brothers and sisters again." As a recent headline shows, attitudes towards marijuana are changing in the septuagenarian's favor. Recreational cannabis just became legal in New York State, and it's possible that Grandpa Woodstock's conviction will be expunged. So what do you think of this older hippie? Should police and New York residents allow him to keep spreading the peace and love? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. Number 6. A multi-generational case. Officers' suspicions were heightened when the driver of a green minivan initially failed to pull over for a simple traffic stop in London, Kentucky in August of 2019. Police followed the vehicle until it pulled into the driveway of a residence, where it was discovered that the 2 female occupants had outstanding bench warrants. A struggle ensued when the passenger refused to exit the vehicle, and things took an even more bizarre turn when the other suspect informed officers that there was a baby in the van. At first glance, there was no sign of the infant, and the child's safety seat was empty. Deputies rifled through the garbage-strewn, insect-infested vehicle and found bags of trash, clothing covered in feces, and a 16-day-old baby boy on the floor between the 2 front seats, with his head facing the center console. There were ants crawling on the infant, who had a soiled diaper and labored breathing, according to a Facebook post by the Laurel County Sheriff's Office. The post also noted that the van had no air conditioning. Paramedics rushed the ailing child to the emergency room where the baby received treatment for dehydration. Police arrested the baby's mother, 32-year-old Rebecca Jean Fultz, and 69-year-old grandmother Charlotte Simpson on a slew of charges, including first-degree criminal child abuse. In a jailhouse interview with WKYT, Fultz claimed that officers exaggerated her son's condition, stating that he had just a few heat bumps on him, and argued that she's a good mom. But she declined to explain why the baby was not in his car seat. It's unknown why the mother and grandmother had previous bench warrants, but if they could neglect a child in this way, it's easy to believe they already had records. Number 5. Fed-up grandma gets physical. One day in mid-2019, when her grandchildren began arguing at her home, 70-year-old Deltona, Florida resident Laura Falls told them that they were making her life miserable and refused to take them to Bible class, the Daytona Beach News-Journal reported. One of the kids began crying, causing an argument to erupt between Falls and the child's mother, 38-year-old Dawn Rigsby. The exchange became heated, and Falls allegedly slapped her daughter, prompting Rigsby to leave the house and call the Wallachia County Sheriff's Office. Rigsby claimed that her mother had slapped her with an open palm, according to the police report. Deputies called Falls to discuss the matter, and when she told them she was at church, they headed straight over to get her version of the story. Falls alleged that she slapped Rigsby because the woman got into her face and started yelling, which might seem like an understandable response, even if we all know that hitting someone is not the correct way to handle a disagreement. But the law apparently took no mercy on the elderly woman, who was handcuffed, put into the back of a police car, and held overnight without bail. Rigsby later regretted tattling on her mother to the cops, telling the News-Journal, "It was a silly argument that got out of hand. I shouldn't have called." She told the police that she did not wish to pursue charges, and the state's attorney's office dropped the case. Number 4. Elderly murderer. When 86-year-old Thomas Hatchett of Manchester, New Jersey had a rent dispute with his 71-year-old landlord Igal Haddad in 2019, he resolved the issue by fatally shooting the man. Police responded to the Leisure Village West retirement community, where they found the victim lying face down in the street, bleeding from bullet wounds to the back of the head, and noticed a bullet hole in the front door of a nearby residence. A SWAT team was dispatched to the scene and entered the home to find it empty. Authorities connected the house to Hatchett and learned that he had another address, so they went there and apprehended the elderly suspect. According to court documents, Hatchett admitted to planning the murder and waiting outside Haddad's residence in anticipation of carrying out the sinister crime, which Ocean County prosecutor Bradley Dale Billheimer described as a brutal and senseless act, according to NJ.com. He rejected a plea deal and instead pled guilty to aggravated manslaughter, earning himself a 10-year prison sentence. Billheimer minced no words in his opinion of the octogenarian sentence, stating Hatchett will most likely spend the balance of his remaining days exactly where he belongs, behind bars. Number 3. Environmental protesters. In 2019, a group of 4 septuagenarians, in other words people in their 70s, got together and concocted a plan to stop timber fallers from cutting down trees at the Rainbow Ridge site in Humboldt County, California. The protesters, Jane Lapiner, David Simpson, Michael Evanson, and Ellen Taylor, were acting on the shared belief that the land is the last, most ecologically significant intact forest in the North Maddle River's headwaters. They reportedly hoped to come to a civilized agreement with the Humboldt Redwood Company, but the negotiations did not turn out as the seniors had hoped, prompting them to move forward with their plan to block workers from entering the forest. Upon trying to enter the area and being stopped, the logging team was a little rough with the group of tree huggers, but they became quite gentle and quite kind once they realized they were dealing with elders, according to Taylor, who spoke with the North Coast Journal of Politics, People and Art following the encounter. The company nevertheless had 4 activists arrested, but the charges, which Evanson described as baseless, thankfully didn't hold up in court and were dismissed. Number 2. Political rebel. If there's one thing we tend to take for granted here in the US, it's our freedom of speech, a protected right to speak our minds even when the government or other authorities do not like what we have to say. Not everyone in the world is this fortunate though, as a 70-year-old Vietnamese man named Ngoen Tong Thoe experienced last year when Ho Chi Minh City police arrested him on suspicion of making, storing, spreading information, materials, and items for the purpose of opposing the Socialist Republic of Vietnam State. Thoe's charges came on the heels of the arrest of a 54-year-old Ho Chi Minh City resident named Pham Chi Dung, who officers said had blatantly broken the law, adversely impacted social stability, and negatively influenced the security and order of the city, in the words of Ju Oi Trey News. Police expanded their investigation into Dung's case, leading them to Thoe. But how exactly did he oppose the state? According to the U.S. Agency for Global Media, Thoe worked as a contributor for Radio Free Asia in the 6 years leading up to his arrest, spreading ideas about freedom in the media, civil rights, and free speech issues. He had even traveled to the U.S. in 2014 to testify about some of these pressing matters, and is the former vice president for the Vietnam Independent Journalism Association. Earlier this year, Thoe was sentenced to 11 years in prison, despite the attempts of several human rights groups to persuade Vietnamese authorities to release him and his co-defendants. Unfortunately, they must pay their dues for daring to criticize the Hanoi government from behind bars. In a statement following the sentencing, US AGM CEO Michael Pak said, "It's appalling and unacceptable that providing objective reporting on Vietnam's repressive government cost these journalists their freedom. Here at World List, we couldn't agree more. How about you?" Number 1. Filicide. 78-year-old Kolkata, India resident Bandashar Malik strangled his 45-year-old physically disabled son Surseen Du to death when he refused to wear a mask upon leaving the house in April 2020. An hour and a half later, the suspect went to the Cheyenne Pakur police station and confessed to the crime, stating that he had killed Sursendu with a cloth. Officers rushed to the residence where they found the man's dead body and charged the elder Malik with murder. The pair had a history of not getting along, according to the police reports. In a media statement, a spokesperson said over the last few days, the father and son used to fight every time Sursendu stepped out of the house without a mask. Yesterday, an altercation broke out for the same reason, and the man killed his son in a fit of rage. The tragic incident came just weeks after the Bengal government imposed a mandate requiring citizens to wear masks in public spaces. And I think we can all agree that Sir Sendhu's father took COVID shaming to a whole new level. Thanks for watching. What do you think of these old people who committed crimes? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe for more videos like this one. I'll see you next time.